Hello, I'm Jennifer Stein. Welcome to the program for Mainline MUFON at the Radnor Channel, Studio 21.
We had an experience when one night we were coming out of church at 8 o'clock at night, and I looked up at the sky and there was this star, and suddenly the star started to go around in circles. And I said, Carol, take a look. And there was a second star, and that star started to go around in circles. Then they started to flash. And then they zoomed away, and then there was an airplane that followed them. So we thought, wow. Well, we saw it. We saw it. We didn't need to. Now, we don't have a picture, and people can say, oh, yeah, you were imagining it. But we saw it.
The two of you saw it together.
We saw it, and we always check one another. I always say, Carol, do you see what I see? Or is that moving up or down? Well, the next month we went again. This is a monthly program that we go to. And there was nothing. There was nothing unusual. However, when we went home, there was a star high in the sky, and we now know the star is Arcturus. It's one of the brightest stars in the sky. And it started to move around. And not just wiggle, it was moving, I would say, on average about let's say the diameter, or twice the diameter of a full moon. So significant movement. And wow, that's strange. Now that's really something. And Carol remembered something that she had read in one of Stephen's books, in which he said, if you see something like a star, and you don't know if it's an airplane or a star or an ET vehicle, ask it to do something that a star can't do. So Carol, just in her mind, without speaking, said, would you move left? And it moved left. Would you move right? And it moved right. It moved up and down. Later on, I asked it to do a square, to do a circle, and it did that. And we've had that connection for 4 years. And in fact, just this morning, we again communicated with our friend, whom we call Pinky. Now, when we were, I might say that a couple of people have said, well, I'm going to come to your house, I'd like to see this. And she's been like a child, that won't perform when there's company. So she doesn't perform for other people, only for us. And when we were down in North Carolina, I looked at Arcturus, and she started to move around. And I said, I'd like to know, does everybody see what we see, or is it just the two of us? And we had a code where if she moves up and down, that means yes, and if she moves across, that means no. And she said, no, it's, we're the only one. So whatever is happening is not happening with the cosmos. It's happening in our heads, which is just another way of communication. So it's a very personal thing for us.
But you know by now as well that you are not alone
We are not
in
alone.
your experience, and that
Absolutely
other
not.
people have had very similar experiences.
Absolutely. And a couple of cases, in one of my courses at Rosemont, I spoke about this experience. And then the next semester when I taught a different course, that student came back and she said, I went out in my backyard and I looked. And I said, if he can see it, I can see it. And she saw some movement as well. I think it's available to a lot of people.
What was it, do you think, that encouraged you to take that step? Was it learning about what Stephen Greer was doing, or?
No, I think quite the contrary. It was the experience itself which was motivating. And we went to Stephen Greer, in a sense, only to check to see what are these other people like. Are they people who are credible? And they're just beautiful people. We were very, very much impressed with the people. There is a difference between what a group like MUFON does and what CSETI does, in that MUFON and a lot of the UFO organizations investigate sightings which are after the fact.
Right.
What CSETI tries to do is to do what's referred to as a close encounter of the fifth kind, where initially there is nothing there, and where the participants together try to do this protocol and attract a contact of some sort and interact with it. So they're different. Both are necessary, I think. But
Yes.
I think what MUFON does is a little closer to the kind of science that I was trained in. What CSETI does is not terribly scientific, but it's very compelling because you're part of it, and it's just amazing. On the Thursday night that we were at our training, and I have to say, not everybody sees certain people see things. Sometimes they happen in a flash, and you're not looking in that direction. So we saw a few things. But on the Thursday night, he really prepared us, and he said, well, there may be an ET vehicle coming down to us, and please look into your hearts and see if you are ready. Would you be frightened? Would you be open to it? So that was sort of the preparation. And a little later, there was an ET craft that went around the group. So it must have been about 50 feet in diameter. I didn't see it. Carol didn't see it. Some people saw it. But what we didn't feel was that while the craft was around us, the temperature went up about 6 degrees. It was a very cold night out on the beach. And having that craft around us
Raise the temperature.
raised the temperature. And I haven't experienced this, but other people said, yeah, well, when the craft is around you, the sound is something like an echo. It's there and you don't see it. And that's because the extraterrestrials have the power of fully materializing or going partially materialized or dematerialized entirely. And for their own protection, they often don't appear openly. There are actually 50 or so groups around the world, one in Australia, as far as Australia, who are linked together.
You're linked online?
Linked in this way, that there's a man, Costa, I've forgotten his last name, who sends out to all of these people, and there are 100 and some participants at the last one, that on a certain day, so it'll be on the third Saturday, within that 24-hour period, your local time, you will go out in whatever way you can and make whatever contact you can. And it just so happened, and so they report, and he sends out these reports, and people have all kinds of good contacts, and they're not always experienced people. They're people who are not believers. And it just happened last Saturday. I was doing a workshop in New Jersey, and that happened to be the Saturday. And so I said, there were about 16 people. I said, well, look, we're going to do, if you don't mind, we're going to do a little bit. It was only about, I would say, no more than 15 minutes. But one person felt an anointing, felt oil coming down. Another person saw a woman with a blue dress, with looking from the back with lights across the back. I mean, saw in her mind. For a 15-minute attempt, that's pretty good. And I think that shows, to me, what that shows is that if you're in a group like that, away from Stephen, you're not likely to be hounded by the military. When we talk this way, people are likely to think, oh, well, there's something like angels or they're supernatural. And I've been asked that directly. Are they supernatural? And what we have to understand is that they are beings like us. They have bodies, but they're just very advanced. They have the ability to dematerialize, which most of us don't. But suppose we took just so simple a thing as a cell phone back 200 years, and we would be thought to be witches or supernatural. They're doing some things that are merely part of their culture. And that's where we're going. That's where our race is going. I've heard a lot of people, we get this very frequently, you're overlooking that there are hostile ETs. How are they hostile? Well, you know, there are incidents like this. There was a case where an ET vehicle was present while some ICBM missiles were shut down. And there was another case where there was an attempt to shoot an atomic bomb at the moon, and an ET came along and knocked it out. And a military mind would say, well, you know, they're attacking our defenses. Obviously, they're hostile. But you could also interpret that as that they're so compassionate of us, they're trying to prevent us from having a nuclear exchange. I'm really very hopeful that they've demonstrated they can shut down the ICBMs. If it ever comes to it, they're going to shut them down and there will not be a nuclear exchange. And that's very, very hopeful for me. Our generation, I think, is one who's grown up fearing the nuclear holocaust.
Absolutely. I mean, did you have little bomb drills when you were in school?
Yeah,
I had
yeah,
them. I had
yeah.
them in elementary school. You
Yeah,
climbed
yeah.
under your desk. What was your school desk going to do in the event of a nuclear
Silly,
exchange?
absolutely silly.
It was silly. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm really very hopeful. Whether there are hostile ETs, I'm not sure. Stephen says absolutely not. Certainly the ones that we've experienced have been nothing but loving. They've in many ways shown their support. I'll give you this one example. I gave a talk in at a private home. It was the first time I had done that. And our experience is that the ETs show their appreciation in some way. So the next day, I was out on the porch, and right in front of me on a plant, there was a dragonfly, a blue dragonfly. I said, all right. It flew up, came back down, flew up, came back down, up and down, up and down. I went in for lunch, came out, it was still there. Went in for dinner, it came back out. And at that point, we looked at one another and it flew away. The whole thing took 7 hours.
Wow.
That is more than random occurrence can account for. I think that's a way of saying thank you. And that's what we've experienced, that we've been given gifts like that over and over again. And strength. Now, you know, you talked about you have to have courage. It's true, you do have to have courage. But there's such an infusion of strength once you set yourself on that path. That's been our experience.